In this edition, IGAD chairperson calls for urgent action to save South Sudanese. Professor Gabisa appointed chair of Laureate Selection Committee. Hello and welcome. This is OBN, Voice for the People. I'm Anwar Kali with the news. Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, released a statement on the 30th anniversary of the housing massacre that took place in northern Ethiopia in 1988 on 22nd of June, just 30 years ago today. Ulma Bain has more.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed released a statement on the 13th anniversary of housing massacre on June 22nd, 1988 of the Derg regime. The Premier said the day is unforgettable for all Ethiopian people and remembered every year in all Ethiopian minds as it is the most severe attack by the government on its own people. The Premier stressed that 2,500 innocent civilians were brutally killed, where 600 individuals were buried in a mass grave. The Premier said the scenario is lesson for each and every Ethiopian. He also underscored that the lesson is remembered to teach the new generation not to repeat such brutal deeds in their era. Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed also called on the entire citizens to work for unity, solidarity and prosperity of their country and contribute their fair share.
The chairperson of IGAD, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of Ethiopia, called on the warring parties of South Sudan for urgent implementation of agreements to save the lives of South Sudanese people. Addressing the opening of the 32nd session of IGAD, head of states and government, he said this. Akilu Gabru reports.
Next to the 63rd session of Council of Ministers, IGAD has held the 32nd Extraordinary Assembly of Heads of State and Government in Finfinesiri. The Assembly has held a discussion on the revitalization proposal, which was proposed by the IGAD Council of Ministers and expected to end humanitarian crisis in South Sudan. Chairperson of IGAD and Ethiopian Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed, while addressing the opening of 32nd session, said tragic humanitarian crisis of the people of South Sudan should come to an end quickly.
People of South Sudan have suffered for far too long. This suffering needs to come to an end, and it must end quickly. To achieve this elusive goal, we cannot continue with business. Each second and minute that passes with the business as usual is a missed opportunity to save lives, to alleviate suffering, to restore dignity, to bring hope back to the hopeless. Excellencies, we need to act, and act now.
Dr. Abiy stressed that IGAD member countries are ready to support any peace agreement to restore sustainable peace and stability in South Sudan. The Premier added that if South Sudanese authorities and different parties are unwilling and unable to see the suffering of their people, member countries would act.
If South Sudanese authorities and the different parties are unwilling and unable to halt the suffering of their people, we need to put them on notice that we are ready to act. We have the moral as well as the legal responsibility to take action. The crisis in South Sudan is not just another crisis in the neighboring country. It has grown to become a crisis in each of our respective countries in the region. Our vital national security interests are at stake. That's why business as usual is over.
President of South Sudan Salva Kiir Mayardit and his opponent Dr. Riek Machar attended the meeting alongside with leaders of Ethiopia, Kenya, Sudan, Somalia and Djibouti. United Nations, African Union, European Union and different countries of the world expressed their readiness to end the tragic crisis of South Sudan.
South Sudan is the youngest nation on earth and was liberated from the Sudan in 2011 after a very severe war of half a century. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres welcomed the positive steps taken recently by Ethiopia and Eritrea to resolve the outstanding issues regarding normalization of the relations between the two countries. The Secretary General commended that the efforts of the leaders of both countries to achieve sustainable peace and good neighborly relations, which in turn will have positive repercussions in the entire Horn of Africa region. The Secretary General also expressed his readiness to provide all support that may contribute to advancing and consolidating the process of engagement between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Similarly, the European Union, EU, welcomed Ethiopia's readiness to fully implement the Algiers Agreement and the decision of the Boundary Commission, as well as the decision by the President of Eritrea to send a delegation to Finifene. In a statement sent, EU's High Representative Federica Mogherini described the move by both nations as decisive steps towards the resolution of the long-standing differences between the two countries. She said that the resettlement on the border issue would benefit Ethiopia and Eritrea, as well as stability in the Horn of Africa region, FABC website reported. The African Union has also welcomed the decision by Ethiopia and Eritrea to improve their relationship. Chairman of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mohammed, appreciated the decision of Ethiopia to implement Algiers Agreement on Border Commission. He also hailed the decision by President of Eritrea to send a delegation to Finifene. The chairman said African Union would provide all the necessary support to advance the started efforts to transform relations of the two countries to new chapter. According to him, the step would have greater contribution to realize the plan to eradicate conflict and war in the continent by 2020. FBC website reported again. Yeah, African Union should work in this regard because there are many areas that are volatile in the continent. The United States is encouraged by the progress that Ethiopia and Eritrea have made to resolve long-standing disputes and normalize relations, the U.S. State Department said yesterday. The statement by the press secretary said, quote, over the past 20 years, the frozen conflict between these states has hindered stability and economic growth in the vital Red Sea region. A durable peace will yield greater prosperity and security not only for the citizens of Ethiopia and Eritrea, but also for their neighbors, the United States, and the world. The United States commended Ethiopia's statement on June the 5th, 2018, announcing that Ethiopia fully accepts the 2000 Algiers Agreement issued in the context of positive political and economic reforms. It also welcomed Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki's June 20th, 2018 commitment to send a delegation to Finifene, Ethiopia, to advance the peace process. The statement added, quote, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and President Isaias Afwerki have demonstrated courageous leadership by taking these steps towards peace. Ethiopia and Eritrea have a critical role in promoting stability and prosperity in the Horn of Africa, it said, adding, the U.S. looks forward to a full normalization of relations and realization of our shared aspirations for both countries to enjoy enduring peace and development. As a witness to the Algiers Agreement, the United States stands ready to facilitate progress toward this goal, the statement added. FBC website reported. The Ethiopian Air Force has organized a well-ghost ceremony for two former commanders who are now appointed to different organizations. Accordingly, General Adam Mohammed, the former chief commander of the Ethiopian Air Force, who is also deputy chief of staff of Ethiopian Defense Force, and Brigadier General Taddese Amelo, the former vice chief commander of Ethiopian Air Force, who is also head of logistics, have gained recognition. General Adam Mohammed said all staff workers and officers should work with maximum efforts in discharging their responsibilities and thanked them for their respect. Brigadier General Tadesse Amelo said all staff members should make maximum effort to sustain the steady development and peace of the country. The new chief commander of the Ethiopian Air Force, Brigadier General Yilma Merdasa, for his part, appreciated the former managers and staff officers for their contribution and wished better achievement for them. He also promised to transform the Air Force to the next chapter. OBN's Olkaba Wandimu reported. The World Food Prize Foundation announced that Professor Gabisa Ejeta, an Ethiopian, the 2009 World Food Prize laureate, has assumed the position of chair of the laureate selection committee. As chair, Professor Ejeta will direct the annual selection of the World Food Prize laureate. Ambassador Kenneth M. Kin, president of the World Food Prize Foundation, said that Professor Ejeta's remarkable achievements have prepared him to assume this prestigious role. In the 32nd year history of the World Food Prize Foundation, only 2 individuals had ever served as the chair of the laureate selection committee. The first was Dr. Norman A. Borlaug himself from 1986 to 2008, when he was succeeded by Dr. M.S. Swaminathan of India, the first World Food Prize laureate, and Dr. Borlaug, closest collaborator in inaugurating the Green Revolution. President of the World Food Prize Foundation, Ambassador Kin, said, quote, "Now that mantle has been passed to another World Food Prize laureate, Professor Gabisa Ejeta, an Ethiopian who was born in extremely poor circumstances in remote Ethiopia and who rose to become one of the most distinguished plant scientists in the world." He added, the World Food Prize Council of Advisors was unanimous in choosing him to lead this most critical function of the World Food Prize Foundation, selecting the annual laureates. The story is taken from the website of the World Food Prize Foundation. Professor Gabisa Ejeta, an Ethiopian, was awarded that equivalent Nobel Prize, the laureate in agriculture. By the way, well known in his researches on sorghum, especially in Western Africa, in Senegal, Mali, Niger, even Sudan, and in Ethiopia as well, his homeland. Thanks for watching. Have a good time. Bye-bye.